it's Erica with 10 Pegs and Crowns, and I am back with a process video. This process video, though, it's going to be a little bit different from the rest. It will be a voiceover, but it'll be different in the sense of what its purpose is for. Now, over on Instagram, I usually share a little bit of what I do. If you've followed a short amount of time, you're probably not aware, but if you've been with me for a little bit, then you are probably aware that I do something called the Loved On Bible gift sets. I know that's a mouthful. I'm still working on a name, but what essentially that is a gift set that I curate and put together for pregnant moms that participate and finish successfully a program called Embrace Grace, which is a ministry that's led, that's a support group that's led within my church. Embrace Grace is an amazing ministry. It's a ministry that is just focused on encouraging and empowering and just lending support and strength to moms who are pregnant who find themselves with little to no support during their pregnancy. Now, to clarify, I am not part of the ladies that help lead that ministry. What I do is on the side is I do, like I have mentioned before, the Loved On Bible gift sets. What that is it's actually a personalized Bible that I journal through while praying and lifting and worshiping. And all I do is just cover the mom, cover the baby and families and circumstances in prayer, lift it up to heaven's throne. And I get to journal artistically and put and make annotations and highlight and just love on this Bible, so that when the 12 weeks is up, that each and every single mom is gifted a personalized Bible that has been prayed over, not just for them, but for their whole family. And one of the amazing, most beautiful things about the Bible journaling community is that none of this is possible without contributions and sponsorships and encouragement. So I just want to thank Miss Kimberly from His Palette. She has a printable shop online called His Palette, and she has so graciously donated any and all printables that I desire to use to help journal through this Bible. So as you can tell, I've used some of this, some of her printables for this entry that I will take you along with. And it's from the printable, I believe, called Already Somebody. So I just want to take you through the process of what it looks like behind the scenes of when I'm praying and worshiping and lifting and covering these mamas in prayer. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the video on fast forward. Here you'll see me opening up an ESV single column journaling Bible. This is the customizable cover. It's completely plain and white on the outside. I prefer this Bible because since I customized the outside cover as well, this makes it a whole lot easier to just glue down or put texture or whatever design I would like. Is just already a blank white canvas. And so I really prefer to use this Bible. For this journaling entry, I will be journaling Isaiah 66, verse 2. All these things my hand has made, and so all these things came to be, declares the Lord. But this is the one who I will look, he who is humble and contrite in spirit and trembles at my word. I went ahead and used His Palette, a printable that is offered by Miss Kimberly at her shop, the Already Somebody kit. These were printed on regular cardstock and clear sticker paper, and also pre-fussy cut off camera just for time and video purposes. I will try to go ahead and attempt to recreate the background that I created for this journaling entry. I will be using the Tim Holtz brick stencil pattern. I believe this is one of his older stencils. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. I will be using Distress Oxides. When I journal in the journaling Bibles, I try not to use heavy inks, so Distress Oxides or watercolors are my go-tos. Using a small finger dauber, I will go in with the Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide as the foundation or the bottom layer for this stencil, and then use the bundled sage for just To kind of give it a more vintagey, worn out look, I kind of want that mossy feel to it, kind of like if you were to see brick that's kind of just been laid there for a while. You know how it's just kind of distressed with the green mossy look to it. So that's the effect I'm going for. It doesn't quite turn out that way, but it's okay. It still looks good. When using the stencils, I just kind of daub ink on random places, kind of to give it a more organic texture in the background. I don't go ahead and just fill in all of the stencil. And then you'll also see me just kind of move the stencil around because I don't want like a very, just very structured pattern. I really do want a very random, kind of vintagey distressed look to the background. So you'll see me just kind of move the stencil around. And again, I only apply ink in very random places because I don't want a very uniform look. Once the main focal background point is laid down on the page, I usually kind of play around with the tabs. I made the tab with some of the background artwork from the Already Somebody printable, and went ahead and used a Dymo label to stamp out the word humble, which is what I'm going to go ahead and place on the actual tab. Here you'll see me kind of go back and forth and decide which side I want to use for the actual page. And I'm not really quite sure which one because one side is more white and the other one's a little bit more pinkish. So I decided that I'm going to go ahead and try to lay out the cluster first. I will just be kind of playing around with the placement of items. I'm not gluing anything down. The reason is I just kind of wanted to give myself an idea of what the page layout would look like to see if it would help me decide which side of the tab I wanted to use. While I'm playing around with the placement, I want to go ahead and remind you that printables from any shop are personal use only. But with that being said, they are personal use only. Go ahead and cut them up. Use them however you see fit. When you go ahead and print them, flip the image, print them the other way around. This is usually how I get the desired effect. I print the image and then I flip the image and then I print the flipped image for myself again. And then I also resize some elements. Some of the elements are bigger, some of them are smaller, and it's the same image, it's just the sizing. And don't be afraid to perform surgery on your printables. Cut them up however you see fit to make them fit better into your page or your layout. I do want to add, don't be afraid to print on different types of paper either. I mainly print on white cardstock, but here you'll see me kind of add and minus and remove some elements that I printed on clear sticker paper. Printing on clear sticker paper usually gives a very soft, very pretty like background effect, so that's mainly how I use it. Here you'll see me kind of debate and decide on which side of the tab finally I'm going to use. Even though the Dymo label itself has adhesive on the sticker back of the sticker, I'm going to go ahead and place some glue because I want to make sure it stays and it's permanent. So when I go to place a tab onto a journaling page, there's no real rhyme or reason as to placement of the tab. I just kind of want a very natural, organic, staggered look of when I do my journaling pages. And the placement of the tab is usually determined by the artwork and the placement of the artwork or the layout of that page. A very much what feels right thought process. Here I am kind of just doing a last placement play around before I start gluing and placing the stickers down. I just want to make sure that this is kind of what I really want. And then the way that I work through a cluster excuse me, is that I usually work from bottom elements up, more background to the surface area. So I usually start by placing everything that I want to kind of that comes out of behind the main cluster or the main focus point of that cluster. So for the most part, the clear stickers are probably what I place down first. Because of the way that I work through a cluster, working from the bottom elements up, usually the top elements tend to move. So you'll usually, or what I usually do is use washi tape to kind of hold the pieces together, especially when there's a lot of moving parts. When you perform surgery on the images and you have a little bits and pieces just that you've kind of like puzzled together, it helps to keep it in place, or it helps me to keep it in place with some washi tape. Once the clear sticker elements have been placed down, you'll see me kind of fussy with the image, or play around with the images and the puzzled pieces I've added, just as a final this is a final go, like this is exactly what I want. And as I'm laying the pieces down, I'm realizing that I'm not exactly liking it, that something is off, something doesn't quite feel right. So I decided to move some of the puzzle pieces around, thinking maybe I just accidentally moved some pieces. And even then, it didn't quite sit right with me. It just didn't seem like that was the final look. So I decided to go back into the little stockpile I had, and I think I decided to go with more of the clear stickers. So here you'll see me perform surgery on some of the images, because I didn't want a lot, but I did want some. So you'll see me cut up some of that, I guess it was like a vine or flower arrangement, into two pieces, and then I split them up between both the left side and the right side. After adding the additional clear sticker vines or leaves, you'll see me play around with that little cluster, and the little pink cluster, and it just didn't quite sit right again. So you'll see me fuss with it a little bit more, and then I just decided to exchange it for the flipped image. So it's the exact same element. When I printed it, I flipped the image around, and I think that actually worked out better. So like I said, it's for your own personal use. Make it work for you and make it work for your layout. Now this is during this whole process of journaling and cutting and gluing and sticking down all the elements onto the page. This is when I lift up the moms by name and their pregnancy and their babies and their whole family. So sometimes they may have other children as well. I'm not always fully aware of the circumstances that surround these ladies. So my prayers are pretty vague, in a sense that I try to cover all areas of their life, finances, relationships, support, jobs, provision, stuff like that. From time to time, I do get to meet the ladies, and so I get to know a little bit more, and I get to pray about them more personally, more specific. But for the most part, it's just, just those really broad prayers. You may also not hear it as in the voiceover, because the recording was that at a different time, but I also have worship music playing in the background. One of the songs that I have been playing throughout the journaling right now is the I Trust in God. It's a song by Elevation Worship, and I know, some people have a lot of opinions and there's a lot of controversy, but that song has really been speaking to me, and I have been really using that song to cover the ladies with prayers about their hearts turning to God and trusting in God and confessing Christ as Lord and Savior. And although this may seem like this is something that I'm doing for someone else, during the Embrace Grace season, God, it really ministers to me. So, how it's kind of like what people say, when you're ministering to others, you're really ministering to yourself. And I do find that to be true and to be the case. There's always something that He reveals to me, or that He's speaking to me, even in my own life, as I'm praying for others. As a final rule for me, I usually go back and try to what looks like I'm trying to push up the image off the page just to make sure that every piece of that element and every puzzled piece has been glued down properly. Here I pull out the Prismacolor watercolors and to try to highlight the verse, and I'm looking to see, and it just doesn't seem like I got the right palette, and sure enough I didn't. I was grabbing the Arteza gouache colors. Arteza gouache colors, or just gouache in general, the medium gouache, is a good middle ground for like acrylics and watercolors. So if you're not a fan of either acrylics or watercolors, this is actually a really fun medium to work with because it kind of gives you the effect of watercolor with the vibrancy of like the acrylic. When using mediums like gouache or watercolor to highlight a verse, I usually go in with a smaller brush. Of course, you can use a wide brush. I just prefer the more just cleaner, sharp lines that the smaller brush gives. I will add that when you're using gouache, you really want to go ahead and dilute it with water because, like I said, it's very vibrant, so it can cover the words. As where when you use watercolor, you probably would have to use a little bit more concentrated watercolor to actually use it as a highlighter. So you just want to be careful how much you dilute a medium to highlight in the Bible, because you want to make sure that it's still, legible. And just because it was a medium I already had out, and because of the how not translucent it is, I went ahead and grabbed a little bit of the black and put it on a actual palette and diluted it very little with some water because I'm going to use it to make splatters on my page. Of course, no page is finished until I add splatters. Usually I add splatters towards the very end, so I usually cover up the text on the Bible and the page next to it, as well as the elements or the the artwork on that page, to make sure that the splatters don't get on them. Some people put the splatters on first and then they work their way up. Is just, again, whatever feels right to you. I like the effect and the look of the splatters as like a final touch. Again, like I said, usually splatters are my final touch, but here's something about the margin on the left side is bothering me, and so I want to see if I can get the brick stencil in there to kind of just add a little bit more dimension and not dimension, some more interest on that side of the page. And so I removed the backing that I used as a protective cover layout, and I still can't quite get into the margin or the bind of the book inside the book or inside the page. And so I have a brilliant idea of cutting down my stencil. As I'm about to cut the stencil, I realize that there's an embossing identification number on the bottom right hand corner of the stencil. So I went to grab a permanent marker to try to write that ID number on the top of the stencil. Unfortunately, that didn't quite work out. I forgot to let it dry, so you'll see me smear it and then clean it off. And so I just wrote down the number on a piece of paper on the side later to make sure that I went back and wrote it in, because I do like to make sure that I know what products I'm using. And I want to say that although trying to cut down the stencil seemed like a bright idea, you'll see me struggle. It didn't actually want to cut, the blade didn't actually want to cut through on the first pass. So what I had to do was kind of do a couple of passes as it made, its indentation, cutting through little by little. And then even when I did, it wasn't very straight. And so I had to go back in and use scissors to kind of, make sure that it was a more straighter edge than when I cut it with the, We Are Memory Keepers, the Works all-in-one tool. I think that's what it was called. I did go ahead and cut off the other side of the stencil just for future purposes, because I know I'm going to want to get into the binding margin of the Bible from here on out, since I was able to do it this time. So I just went ahead and cut it off on the other side and got that out of the way for the next time. So now to try to see if my idea worked, and it did. And so I was actually very, very happy that it did. And just using what was ever left over from me using the daubers earlier, I don't go in and use or add more ink. I just use whatever what was left on the daubers to stamp the inner margin, because like I said, I didn't want to add a lot. I just wanted to add a little bit more interest, so it felt more balanced. And I'm actually quite pleased by the effect of stamping or stenciling in the margin. And so I'm going to go ahead and move on to stamping out the title or the words onto the page, which is the last and final step. I will be using two different stamp sets. One of them is from By the Well for God. It's the Little Matthew stamp set, and I think it's sized 4x3 or 3x4. This stamp set I don't think is available any longer, but the other stamp set that I'm using is a Sweet and Sassy stamp set, or formerly known as Sweet and Sassy stamp set. Sweet and Sassy stamps. I think they are rebranding to Creative Worship stamps, and so you'll see me fuss with this particular Letter Tiles Alpha stamp set from Creative Worship. These kind of resemble a Scrabble tile, and all I really want to use is the actual font of this stamp set. So I'll ink up the stamp, and then I will individually go ahead and clean up the border and the little number on the side with a wipey, because again, all I want is the font of that letter. And yes, I do this for every word of the word humble. And usually when I stamp out a word onto a journaling page, I usually start with the last letter of that word and then work my way backwards, depending on where the layout is, because I just feel like I want to make sure that there's enough room as I'm stamping out, and I don't want to run out of room. And usually when I stamp left to right, that tends to happen to me. So I've learned to start from left to right to make sure that the whole word fits. I forgot to mention that not only did I want to stamp out in two different fonts, the word humble and contrite, I also wanted to stamp it out in different colors as well. So for the word humble, I decided to use the Tattered Rose Distress Oxide color because I felt like it coordinated better with the flowers. And then for the word contrite, I will be using the Bundled Sage, or I'm sorry, not Bundled Sage, the Speckled Egg color, just so there's more contrast between the words, so not just font but also color. I know that this may seem a little bit annoying or irritating to some, having to individually clean every element of the stamp set as I stamp out the word humble, since I will be doing this for every Bible that I work through the season. But I just want to mention again that, this is a time where I'm praying and worshiping and lifting up the moms and the pregnancy and the baby and any siblings and circumstances they might be going through. And since I have very broad general prayers, I try to be as thorough as I can, unless I know very specific prayers to pray for. So this gives me an opportunity to really dive into and intercede for them. So for sizing purposes, that's what made me choose the Little Matthew stamp set for the word contrite. I just wanted to make sure that since it was a much longer word than the word humble, that contrite was going to fit in that 2-inch margin. And then again, you see me use the same strategy, right to left stamping for the word. And when you use this strategy, I want to emphasize, make sure that you double check before you stamp. We think we know what we're stamping, especially when it comes to art. It's not the same as writing out a word. Stamping out a word individually, letter by letter, can trip you up sometimes, and it's happened numerous times to me where I've actually misspelled a word. So just learn from my mistakes. Always double check before you stamp to make sure that you're stamping the word properly or correctly. As I'm finishing up the word and stamp out the letter O, you'll see that I barely have enough room to stamp the letter C, and that's why I start right from left to make sure that the whole word fits. And as a finishing touch, although I could have just left it like this, I use a brush pen. This one's a duo-ended one. One side is black and the other one's a little bit grayish. I use the gray side to kind of give it a shadowed effect. Again, you don't need this. Again, I'm just adding a little bit more interest. I want the words to kind of stand out and, you know, have a contrast against each other. So I want the word humble to stand out a little bit more. As I'm finishing up the shadow effect on the words, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you and for joining me today on the little behind the scenes of how I journal for the Bibles for Embrace Grace. Any and all links will be posted in the description box below. And I just want to say thank you for joining me today, and I hope that to see you next time. And until then, love you. Bye-bye.